Good evening, everybody. As a courtesy to our guest group, I'll speak in English. Usually there is an introductory, and after that I answer questions. Tonight is different. The reason is that you brought the introductory. You brought in your story, your pain, your whole narrative. This narrative is teaching you who you are. Yours is more than 3,000 years old. It doesn't matter how much of this story is verified by scientific methods. What matters is how much you believe in it and how much you identify with it. And as it turns out, the West and the Middle East is loaded with conflicting narratives. These narratives result in various forms of identification. When that happens, we create various kinds of karma. The four kinds of karma is individual karma, couple or dual karma, family karma, and group or social karma. The nature of bonds between each of the four is different. You relate to yourself, to your partner, to your family, and to your society through various channels. And that means that the way your narrative functions defines your connection to your partner, to your family, and to your group, your society. So this narrative is loaded with opposites. Who is us and who are they, or who is them? What am I as an individual, and who are you if you are not part of my family and you are not part of my society? And these opposites, these dualities are formed into very complicated patterns. We believe in them. We identify with them. When does this stop? When we ask questions. So when you ask questions, those who are attached to these identities, they don't like it. So when you are suffering, you do ask questions. We cannot prevent that. Because we are humans, we want answers why we are suffering. So after the four kinds of karma, I mentioned the Four Noble Truths. Because we do recognize the fact of suffering. We want to see the cause of suffering, the end of suffering. And we want to find the method, the way to end that suffering. And you cannot proceed on this path. You cannot even begin if you do not ask questions. And when that happens, you begin to question who you are. Why do my relationships function in the way they do? Why do I repeat painful or traumatic patterns? Why is my partner reflecting me in the way she does? Why is she repeating these patterns that annoys me? I mean, she says she loves me, but I'm just so nervous. 2 years ago when she said, I love you, I was excited. I knew something good was coming. And now she says, I love you, and I'm oh, what's coming? What happens after this? What's coming? Why is my family functioning in the way it does? Why do we repeat these patterns over and over again? That I recognize my grandfather in my son. Why is that? And why is my society, my nation, if they are equal, function in this way? We begin to ask these questions, and there are inescapable experiences as a consequence. First of all, you might feel like an outsider. It's also illusory and temporary, but it's a very, very cold feeling. I don't belong anywhere. And if you see that, it's the first inkling of freedom. It's not what you thought of freedom before. But it comes in unexpected ways because you wanted answers, so there you have it. And you realize if you subscribe to the notion of good and bad in this narrative, you will never change. If you identify with all the good and bad in your narrative, your partner will never change, your family will never change, your society will never change. So in Zen, there's another quadruple method of teaching. We call them the four kinds of like this. It's one of the hardest to understand. So when you realize that all these ups and downs, us and them, good and bad, your God and my God, are illusory, what is there to see as the truth? First of all, you realize that if you don't attain something beyond any name and form, you are helpless. You have no grounding. You have no clear reference point. And that's why in Zen we say, do not attach to dualistic thinking and go beyond that. This is the gateless gate. Why do we say that? Because if we don't attain that this good and bad, this suffering and happiness is created by us, in all the 4 classes of our karma, we remain children. We remain barbarian. We remain ignorant. So in Zen, this gateless gate is the point beyond all dualities and the point beyond all thinking. It's clear like space, clear like a mirror. And in this mirror, everything is reflected. You attain this, you see the truth clearly. The sky is blue and the trees are green. And next step, you attain correct function. So, substance, truth, function. Substance is when you become one. I think become one is familiar, right? It's one, there's a whole society about become one, okay? It teaches many things to you, like Lashuv Latzmi. It's a very good teaching, okay? In terms of the 4 kinds of like this, it's guess, become one like this. So when you attain this oneness, it's becoming one, okay? What you see in this mirror is truth like this or only like this. And when you function correctly, it's just like this. The suchness or thusness of action or function. That's when you don't label it as good and bad, my or yours, us or them, but you see it exactly as it is, in terms of cause and effect. Not in terms of your idea, but in terms of actual cause and effect relationship. Thus, we have the 3 kinds of like this covered, and you remember because you're smart. There's a 4th one. So it's the 4th, which is very interesting. We call that without like this. Why is that? In this world, there are not just sentient beings, there are insentient beings or objects, as we say. Their consciousness does not appear like the trees, the rocks, the earth. They have function, they're part of nature, but they don't have a distinct consciousness. And for them, the problem of suffering does not appear because their I, my, me does not appear. Animals are halfway through. They're very sentient, but they don't have a distinct notion of I, but they have a notion of suffering. They just don't know it. They scream when they are being eaten. So it hurts them, but they don't define it as suffering because they don't have a notion of self. If they had a distinct notion of I, then the dogs would sit under the tree and say, let's become better dogs. Or the snakes would just curl up and they say, okay, let's not produce any more poison, only medicine. Just medicine, we just spit out medicine. No more poison. Same substance. Okay? One way poison, other way medicine. But the 4th kind of like this, as I mentioned, just like this, is having 2 versions. And that's where everything is decided. Someone is sad, what do you do? Also become sad or make them happy? Someone's hungry, either you give them food or you also go hungry. Somebody is happy, you share that happiness. We call that subject just like this. When somebody is hungry, you give them food. Somebody is thirsty, give them drink. We call that object just like this. So when somebody is violent with you, what do you choose? You become violent, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, or you stay peaceful? The answer is not so simple. Don't be religious here. We start with the 4 kinds of karma. That defines your responsibility. How do you respond? You escape because you don't want to be violent and delegate violence to others when you're being attacked. Or you become angry and say, I will kill them all. And I'll be a hero. What do you do? Moment to moment. Now, that decides your path. And in Zen, we have various ways to look at it, okay? But one is paved with awakening. It leads to cleansing or purification, and it leads to growth or development. If you don't wake up, then you cannot attain your true nature. That means your mind will become more and more polluted. That means you cannot grow. Impossible. In history, there are many examples, from Tibetan monks to Korean monks, who one of them chose the ultimate peaceful path, and the Chinese just slaughtered them. They didn't resist. The Koreans, when the Japanese attacked them, Sosa and Tesa arranged them into monks' armies, and they chose the path to fight against the Japanese because their families, their society, they all supported them. So how could they just sit in the monastery and pretend to be peaceful, and getting slaughtered was the result? So the temples became targets. Many monks died. Thousands of temples got burned, but their spirits did not get burned. And the temples can be rebuilt. How do you rebuild your mind? If you have an eye, it can be destroyed. If you have no eye, only clear like space, clear like a mirror, that cannot be destroyed. So in this way, you have your true nature as the source of wisdom and compassion. It translates into patience and endurance. Patience relates to compassion, endurance relates to wisdom. Why am I saying that? Because you guys are having a rough time. Karma goes around in circles, in cycles. If you miss any part of that cycle, your vision is limited. I don't believe that people should just repeat or echo something they did not experience. Therefore, they do not genuinely believe in. So I do not expect you to believe in reincarnation. But at a smaller scale in life, you should see how karmas are born, they are reaching maturity, they perform, they have some function, and then they dissolve. And a few decades later or years later, they're born again. They again reach maturity, they again manifest, then they dissolve, and there's a pause, and then they are appearing again. How does it repeat itself? Your narrative did not change. Your identity did not change. Your individual, couple, family, and social karma did not change. The cycle of violence gets repeated. The Buddha says in the Dhammapada, if this exists, that also exists. If this ceases to exist, that also ceases to exist. But there's something in between. If this changes, that also necessarily changes. What happens as an added pain is that we cannot live with a situation that our intellect cannot resolve. We must understand it, explain it, put it into a logical framework. Otherwise, we don't have a sense of security. We don't have a sense of function or a mission. So we want to understand. That's why Csong An Szunim says understanding cannot help you. Kongan practice teaches you to live with don't know, to have that inside of you. Moreover, this don't know leads to the gateless gate, to no thinking. Maybe the first step to any kind of meaningful solution that does not repeat 3,000-year-old patterns would mean that you live with this don't know and acknowledge that you cannot solve the problem. And living with this don't know means that your honesty about your incapability to solve the problems begin to help, because you were being honest. And if you tell that to the other party or parties that are involved in this, then going on this way, like Socrates, do you know? It seems you don't really know. Do you really understand? I ask you a few more questions, checkmate, you don't really understand. So I don't expect you to know why, because I don't know either. So if you don't know and I don't know, that's where we meet. That's why we could shake hands. In the field of beliefs, identifications, and understanding, there will not be any solution. Don't even hope for it. Jerusalem is the best example. There's this beautiful hotel, King David's Hotel. I love the toilet. It's so clean. It's amazing. You truly attain emptiness there. Amazing. Purity, cleanliness. So how about making a hotel for don't know? This is your hotel for your no-thinking mind. And first floor, second floor, third floor, you have each suit, you know, for this God, that belief, you know, Coptic, Armenian, Hasidic, Sephardim, Ashkenaz, Sunni, Shia, everyone has a suit. You guys just have some food together, okay? Because everybody goes to the same restaurant.
Yeah, so I mean...
That restaurant, wow. I didn't even go in. It's just wow. And this don't know is the best food for the mind. But to attain that takes a lot of humility. For that, people would have to let go of their ego, their prefixed ideas. And your personality is okay, as long as you see it as relative. Because then you see how imperfect we are, how interdependent we are, and how impermanent we are. When that happens, on the basis of this 3I, impermanence, imperfection, and interdependence, we can meet on that platform, because it's true about all of us. But when the person becomes absolute, because I am the messenger of God, my God, and you are the messenger of your God and your idea and your identity, it becomes absolute, because you're the representative of eternity and salvation and supreme truth, whatever that is. And when that happens, we become enemies, because we are absolute. And these absolutes cannot be reconciled, never. Can we afford that? Depends on us. How much pain, how much suffering, how much do we want of that? So the Zen means you lower the threshold of suffering, you feel it sooner, but you also become stronger. So you could endure more, but your red lights go on much sooner. Okay? And then you recognize the other's pain, and you also recognize that as yours, because if that guy suffers, soon becomes angry, you suffer. This is something that everybody in this room understands, and I really, really praise all of you because you're doing hard practice. This is not lost on you. What I'm saying is pretty well understood. I just want to ingrain it. And from a minority position, you have to influence the majority without becoming like the majority. I think this is enough for an intro, okay? And if you have any questions, I'll try and answer them from the depth of my heart.
So my question is, to what extent the human beings can suffer? Like, to what extent they should suffer till the change will happen?
No one knows. It depends on individuals, yeah? And the question is, how much suffering do you need to become wise and compassionate, i.e. to wake up? That's the only question you can genuinely ask. The larger the group, the more unpredictable it is. When you look at Germany 100 years ago, they went on a path which really increased their threshold. They became totally insensitive. They were taught how to hate. So how much teaching do you need to start hating other people? Or how much suffering do you need to wake up from that hate? an entire world war. What does it take? 2 world wars? Hello. So you can only ask that genuinely in your own case.
As a nation, there is no prediction as a nation, like as a suffering nation.
Well, you can see historical examples when people broke, when a small group held steadfast, or they were exterminated, or they exterminated themselves. So from Masada to Ben Gurion, you can see many, many ways of resisting higher powers. And these responses begin on what you believe in and how much suffering you have to endure for that belief. And your nation is nothing short of extraordinary in that regard, because you have a very strong faith. Yeah, but the picture is not so rosy. It means that that faith defines the majority, not just the 800,000 Orthodox Jews. Pretty much everyone else, by definition, the derivative of this culture. I mean, I'm totally amazed. You know, the Shabbat elevator, I'm wow. How could someone think like that? Or when we went for a walk.
Very creative.
It's amazing, you know. This is the rules. We have electricity. That works. I don't. Or I've seen these wires in one of our retreat places. And I said, what are these wires? He said, these are the Shabbat boundaries. That's how far you can travel from your distance, like from your city, and that does not define as travel. You're just taking a walk. You extend those boundaries, you broke the rule. It's nothing short of amazing. So how come we cannot extend that to the other parts of our life? The answer is belief. Belief. So look at the diaspora Jews, more than 2,000 years. So what held your nation or your people? It wasn't a nation at that time, to be proper. Right? People together. You know that better than I do. Faith. The holy language is Hebrew, because everybody spoke different vernacular in the country. But the ancient Hebrew was on every scroll, in every synagogue. Rabbis spoke only that when they taught or preached. Maternal line of hereditary lineage, which is much more accurate than male. And your set of habits or cultural customs defined as kosher, but it's not equivalent, but it's kind of fits, okay? These 3 things. This set of identity was enough to preserve yourself for over 2,000 years, from First Temple, Second Temple, Judea, Romans, Bar Kokhba, everything. Everything. Nothing and no one could break you. And this is remarkable. What do you do with that? And after the Holocaust, you will have almost eternal moral high ground, because you suffered so much. What do you do with it? That's the question. How do you use that? It can erode. Nothing is permanent. The museum tries to really ingrain into people what happened with remarkable success. I went to Yad Vashem, thank you. After 2 hours, I had to come out. And I was crying after 15 minutes, like that. Who wouldn't? Who would be so callous not to see what happened? Do we learn from that? Next question.
During my time here, I kind of see how the mind can be beautiful and how we can make beautiful things like this place. And I'm kind of baffled by the October 7th massacre, because sometimes it comes up when I sit. And it's been over a year from now.
Almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
Almost. We're kind of close to that.
Yeah. And I'm especially touched when I think about the women and children, because I cannot bear how human beings can do such I mean, the mutilation, the vandalistic defilement. I don't get that. I mean,
Well,
maybe there's nothing to get, but I don't know.
if you ask specific questions, you'll get specific answers. And I don't mean from me.
So yeah,
Look at the process. Look at the whole process, how that powder keg of hatred was created. The Gaza Strip didn't exist 60 years ago. It was created. People were pushed into that. People started to really hate majority people in Israel. And it was a bomb ticking. And if you look at it from an external, I'm not saying neutral, but an external point of view, it was a disaster waiting to happen. So the question you should ask, what does it take for people to become like this barbaristic, unimaginably, terribly hateful people?
That's my question.
Look at cause and effect. Start from 1948. Go on with all the wars, all the peace treaties, everything that created that mindset. Because that's where conditioned existence as a teaching helps you. Nothing exists by itself. Everything is a result of cause and effect. How did that happen? So how did those minds that started to live there, among all those difficulties, unemployment, pressure, their own narrative, the Yehudi, okay? So that mix became poison. That poison got filled into weapons, and it lost all humanity and attacked you. But it doesn't exist by itself. It definitely wasn't created by God. It was created by human mind. So step by step, see how that suffering was created. It's the cause of suffering. You can trace that. If you're clear enough, you can trace that.
It kind of seems like every cause is kind of the chain is kind of repeating itself. So it's kind of hard to find the source.
No, it's not hard. Everything has a primary point. And now I'm saying that your mind, your thinking mind, has to find it. Start with the creation of Israel. Okay? West Bank, Gaza Strip, various wars, how society changed, how the mind changed in these enclaves, okay? It's history, it's politics, it's sociology, it's religious history, whatever that is, you can make that clear. But that doesn't bring you the solution. It brings you understanding, but it doesn't bring you the solution. That's why we teach this moment. That if this moment is clear, everything is clear. If this moment is not clear, nothing is clear. And then we say, keep these 4 channels of your manifestation very, very pointingly clear, accurate. Speech, action. Thinking, emotion. And that's why we bow 3 times a day to Kwansan Bosal. Feelings become compassion. Munsu Bosal Manjushri. Thinking becomes wisdom. Samanta Badra. Okay? Deheng Boyon Bosal. Action. Action becomes help. Okay? And speech, Jijang Bosal or Kritigarba, becomes truth. If we don't purify these 4 channels, we keep lying to ourselves and lying to others. That's the start of suffering. So, this Don't Know Hotel has a convention. And if everybody really doesn't know, and after a while we can say, okay, so you don't know, I don't know, they don't know, so how can we help? That's where the change would begin. Yeah, you can have various kinds of understanding. I got a wonderful book, and I appreciate that because I want to understand your history much better. And I'm reading now also the first 400 years of the Catholic Church because I really want to understand between the lines how anti-Semitism got so ingrained in European culture that it went on for millennia. That hatred is beyond description. And the Muslims just echoed it. They didn't have to learn much. They could borrow it from Christians. How did that happen? Okay, what was not being discussed How did we turn on each other? By not being honest, truthful. So you cannot find the solution in the past. Okay? That's what the Diamond Sutra says. The mind which is divided into past, present, and future cannot attain awakening. Because this moment is the most important. Why? Because all the karma of the past, the present, and the future are present at this moment, whether you see it or not. It's a total reverse of conventional thinking. You're worried about the future, you ignore the present, and you want to look for answers in the past. That's delusion. That's delusion. Don't ignore the past. Don't attach to the present. Don't worry about the future. Look at your karma right now. What kind of person are you right now? What are you doing, saying, feeling, thinking? What do you allow others to do, say, feel, and think? In Yad Vashem, there is a huge sentence that a country is not just defined by what it does, but also what it tolerates that others do. It's there. Read it. So it's a huge responsibility to have awakened leadership. That's why I really respect your people, that for months, many months, there were hundreds of thousands of people demonstrating again for something that you couldn't really attain. But if you don't demonstrate that, there's absolutely no hope. I'm not sure about the results, whether you could change any course that your leader was taking to dismantle democracy. But let me remind you, all the dictatorial leaders, except in Asia, if you look at America and Europe of the last 100 years, everyone who took the helm as a dictator got elected by democratic processes. Then they abused them. Then they mocked them, dismantled them. And step by step, whether it took years or months, but usually it takes years for these smarties to slice up democratic processes, disenfranchise people, impoverish people, manipulate people, turn people against each other, and then divide and rule. Well, the Romans already knew how to do that. And when people are ignorant, their level of consciousness goes very low, and they can be exposed to all this and they believe it, and it becomes part of their narrative, the story we believe in, the story we identify with. And that's why in silence, when you do this no-thinking practice, you see how ridiculous this narrative is. That's why when you said you want out, I said you have to pay the price. When I said you have to ask questions to get to the truth, the first question is, why were you born a Jew? If you don't answer that, your gate is closed. Because subconsciously, you are still part of the narrative, part of the story, the belief system. And when you begin to ask questions, then you develop some insight. And that insight is the start of disengagement. Ends with non-identification, continues with compassion. And that's when you can help. When your identity is not enforced, but consciously taken. Okay? So you might ask, why do we have to go so distant to see this completely? Well, if you want to have a complete picture just of Mother Earth, you have to go thousands of kilometers into space, and then you have Earth rising, and then the complete image. It's very famous. It's one of the Apollo missions. They just turn the cams around, and that's how you can see completely. So why do we have to go back to Adam and Eve? Well, it's not distant enough. We have to go back even further. But that's not in the past, like I said. It's in your mind. Before your mind creates God, before your mind creates Adam and Eve, before your mind begins to talk. Csong An Szunim had a very sincere attempt to have Catholics, Jews, Buddhists, sit at the same table and have something meaningful, more than just talking, okay? We've been talking for decades. centuries, millennia, signing all these beautiful papers, and nothing meaningful happened. So his suggestion was that all these leaders would meet, plant a tree together, take a meal together, have a bath together in the same pool, and then go home. Just news of this, but no individual speech, nothing as a big decree or a big wisdom or a big idea, nothing, no speech. It never happened. It never happened. I leave you to it why. But sincerely, if I saw any other correct way than attaining and using don't know, I would be there. I would try that. And in terms of our practice, I don't care how many lifetimes it takes. At least we will walk on the correct path. And we don't care if people don't want the other. We just try to attain correct situation, correct relationship, correct function. That's all we can do. And if you do that, then you notice two things. You do not become the victim, and you do not become the perpetrator. Neither perp nor victim. That's the middle way. More questions? There.
I agree with all the things that you said to us. Now my son should go to the army in about 2 years. Okay. What should I tell him?
He's a soldier. He follows the doctrine, the rules of engagement. He fights for his country. His situation is very simple. You don't make him think too much. Follow orders. Use your own eyes and ears. If you're a soldier, you're at the front end. You have no time to think. You have no way to divert, because your job in this group karma is to protect your society, your family, your country. No choice. Okay. No choice. But you have a choice. You bless him. You love him. You support him. At that level, you cannot go there. But when he's finished with the army, when he's exhausted, tired, disappointed, PTSD, then prevent him from self-destruction. Why? Those who are used to kill and destroy, although it's on a morally defined platform, the rules of engagement, and the rightful kill, because you have to prevent, further violence. We all know that. But your heart is taking the toll. Your heart, deep inside, cannot endure it.
The new story of Israel, yes.
It happens to thousands and tens of thousands of people. Then begin to heal. That's why I said, you have to win the war. You're forced to win the war. There is no other way. And now there's some truce that signals the end of hostilities. But for how long? How long? Before the next one blows over. Okay? So, after that, heal the wounds. And then change your country by changing yourself. If I saw anything else, I would teach you that. What we are missing in this country, that after 1989 and 90, when there was a peaceful transition, we didn't change ourselves. We didn't change the way we think. We form ourselves as a nation. We became vulnerable, exposed. We became our own victims. And since 2010, it's getting worse.
I think
So
that the partner
if
is getting worse too. So
Yeah.
the partner become radical more and more. So
Yeah. So in a much less exposed way, with much more kind of closed up and culturally secluded way, without an external threat, Hungary is going the same way. We are our own worst enemies. Terrible. So within that pattern, you have to decide, what part of the problem do you want to be? Do you want to be the suffering end, or the way to end that suffering? That's your choice. We have very little other choice. Your son, he's doing his duty. But you should tell him, fight in a way that you do your job, survive, and be able to look into the mirror afterwards. Because what is the worst defeat? The worst defeat is not death. The worst defeat is that you become similar to your enemies. When your enemies can make you do the same things as they did to yourself, is the worst defeat. Because then you transformed into the same inhuman, intolerable person as your enemies are. That's the real defeat. Okay? More questions? Here.
These questions that we asked, when I ask them, why am I born a Jew? Why am I born to my parents? Those questions like make me cry all the time when I ask them.
Then you ask them correctly. Correct source of the question, correct result. You can have 3 kinds of liquids in response. One of them is tears. The other is sweat. You practice. But if you don't have enough sweat and tears, there's blood. You become violent. So your choice is actually pretty good. Tears are very honest. You don't make yourself cry. You just ask the question, boom, these tears appear. It's a sign of the purification of the soul, your own heart. And if there's enough sweat, then you can turn this purification into correct growth, correct process to the right direction. It's quite okay.
Does it have like a real answer, or should it just make me
when you cry, just cry.
Don't know?
When you cry, just cry. That's it. See how it appears, stick with it, stay in it, and then when it disappears, then it disappears. It's okay. Most of these processes are subconscious. Whatever comes through the threshold of your consciousness, you become clear about that, you become conscious of that. Don't dig, don't check, don't hold. Okay? Whatever needs to come to the surface, believe me, it does. Traumas are the first. They want to find the light of awareness so that you could relieve yourself from that. Okay? It's okay. Keep crying. More questions?
I want to ask a personal question because I understand that I need to do my job to less violence in my life and in our life. I want to ask, when I became more close to person, to people, husband, and very close to someone, I see that the pattern is returned that they getting anger.
They are getting angry?
Yeah, they quickly get in anger.
At you?
Something that I say or do, or it's pattern. So I close to someone, to those people that get quickly anger.
Okay, and always, all the time?
In my space, not all the time, but it's...
So when they're not angry, what other mind do they have?
Something that I said, getting them angry.
Okay, I understand that. What's your question?
I don't know what I do, what the roots that I need to this violence, not to repeat it.
This is the question that you cannot answer just by yourself because it's based on an interaction. It's the interaction between you and someone with an intimate relationship to you, right?
Yeah.
So it takes a certain amount of courage to ask that question from the other party really close, who is really angry. Say, honey, you are angry, but inside, I love you. How did that turn into anger in your heart? Is it something I said? Is it something I did? So please tell me, what is it exactly that makes you angry? I'm open to it. If you don't ask that, then anger remains attachment anger because they're attached. They don't even know why. Just you trigger something, push their buttons, and boom, just anger mind appears. Attachment anger is 0 degrees on the Zen circle. So when you ask the question, there's some understanding, becomes perceived anger, 90 degrees. And then you can help yourself and therefore the other go beyond that. And without practice, the other will repeat the same thing. If you practice, you don't repeat the pattern. That means transcended anger, 180 degrees. It's totally cast off. And when that happens, you see that karma doesn't disappear, but your relationship to it will change. And what that means is that at 270 degrees in the Zen circle, you transform anger into helpful action. Instead of destruction, it becomes this moderate and careful creation. Okay? Because what happens when you don't get what you want, or they don't get what they want, then desire turns into anger. It comes from helplessness. So ask about the reason. So I have now intimate relationship, within the family, and we are so close. We can see each other's heart, each other's I, my, me really close, but we sometimes don't know how to handle it. So intimacy is a very big teacher, but by itself it's not enough. Otherwise everybody with an intimate relationship would wake up, become Buddha, become Bodhisattva. This is not what we see. Just like becoming a parent can help you on the path, but just making children does not automatically make you a Buddha or Bodhisattva, because then this guy with 3 would already be through heavens, and we are just struggling like all of us, okay? All of us. And that's wonderful. So we need something more, and we call that the Dharma. So how much can your intimate relationships perceive cause and effect? I don't mean they would have to become practitioners or Buddhists or whatever, forget that. But how much can they see that 2 + 2 = 4? And sometimes we can't. We just can't. We refuse. 2 + 2 is 5. Why? Because I said that. So I am the 5th, okay? Terrible. So this is the reason why we have to practice, perceive all this karma, and that perception will change your patterns. That transcendence will make you disengaged and not identified with all that. And I don't see anything else.
Thank you.
When I was unmarried, I had a lot more ideas. More questions? Go, one.
You spoke about the demonstrations in Israel, for example, and from what I understood, like you were in favor of these demonstrations.
If they are done right.
Sorry?
If they are done right, and as far as I know, it was clean. No violence, no provocations, no bad voices. It was clean.
Until some point, there was...
I mean, the other party is not stupid. They know how to manipulate people, influence crowds.
Yeah, but my question is, isn't it choosing a side? And like
you cannot avoid that.
That's the question, because...
It's not a question. It's a situation. You cannot avoid that. Once the die is cast and duality is manifest, you have to choose.
So then you're not in the don't know way, the middle way.
Of course not. Inside you can keep it, outside you cannot. Inside you keep clear mirror mind, and outside you have to fight or endure the fight. You have to take sides, because if not, everything and everybody is destroyed. And there's no sense in it. There's no use in it. There is no awakening just by dying or killing. Okay? If any one of these processes would bring awakening, then death would mean enlightenment, and it does not. Okay? Or killing would mean you wake up. It definitely does not. So you have to take sides, and in fact, it's a very strong call for attaining the middle way, attaining clarity, attaining no I, my, me, so that your person would function clearly, so that your path would be clear. So when I was a soldier, it's nothing comparable to your army. We had a much smaller army, much different mentality. But it was an army. We learned how to shoot, how to march, how to do all this. But we couldn't do even 1/10 of what you guys are doing. So we had a rule. If we have to defend the country, we would do that. But if we are ordered to conquer another country for the sake of the greater good or some communist ideology, we would desert. We would desert. We would lose the robe, the garb, we would lose the uniform, everything, and then become fugitives. So that's one way of making distinctions. But you have to be very clear not to attach to neutrality and not to attach to opposites. See the direction. Csong An Szunim always teach, direction, direction, direction. What happens if you don't take sides? What happens if you take side A? What happens if you take side B? Okay? See the path. Choose the right one. Okay.
Can I add something more?
Okay, go on.
So effectively, how you can, as a minority, affect the vast majority that they play a different, totally different game and they speak a different language. Like, I don't mean...
Okay.
You know,
who is the founder of the Hasidic Jewish tradition? It was about 250 years ago in Europe. Who was he? You should know. Yes, Baal Shem Tov. That's him. He was an individual, one person. How did he make it? Because he was of the same flesh and blood, had the same notion of suffering and redemption, and shared everything with people, but had a different view. So become part of that karma. You are already Jew, so no big deal. I'm a goy. I'm an outsider. Okay? I have something you don't have. Huh? So when you are inside and you're not questioned as your identity, you belong there. You can make a difference by attaining the situation but not identifying with the situation. Okay? Attaining the narrative but not identifying with the narrative. Attaining with people's pain and suffering but take another view than just become part of that suffering and complain together and curse together and having the same absolutely wrong responses to the impulses from the outside. You would become different. That's how even one individual can totally influence a huge crowd. There's many examples, from Jesus to Gandhi, from Buddha to Lao Tzu and Confucius, attain that kind of mind, attain that level. Our Buddha nature teaches us that we can all do that. That's why we strive. Over there?
Zen exists for 1,500 years and Buddhism 2,500 years. How come?
Actually, can I teach you a little history?
Okay.
Buddhism is 2,500 years.
Yeah, well,
Zen is about 2,000 years if you go to China with that. And Korean Zen is about 1,700 years. So that's beside the point. But your question is from eternity. So it doesn't matter how many years of Buddhism we have.
Okay.
So I'm listening.
And we are learning that in Zen, that the true nature is compassion and love. But
the manifestation of your true nature is kindness, love, compassion, wisdom. So what do you want to say?
history shows that it's very easy to unite a group of people with hate.
Yeah,
And there are a lot of wars.
It's very quick.
How come Zen is not more efficient?
Because it doesn't strive to be efficient. Efficiency is also illusion. So everything is a manifestation of the same substance. But before we attain that substance, we are not capable of the higher functions of the same substance. So everything appears, stays, and disappears, and that's the manifestation of our true nature or the substance of this universe. But if we are ignorant about it, we are incapable of wisdom, love, compassion, selfless help, etc. As long as you are afraid of death, you are not free. If you attain the mind beyond life and death, you become free from the bondage of your ego. That's when you can have wisdom, love, and compassion. Before that, it's just the ignorant or semi-ignorant manifestation of everybody's karma. Okay? How do we know that this is ignorant? By judgmental mind, by projections. First, it's your fault. First sentence already reveals your fault. Not my fault. I'm not part of it. I'm saint, holy, peaceful, whatever. The worst is enlightened, is the worst. It's your fault. That's when you see the guy's nowhere. Nowhere. So everything is the manifestation of true substance and our true nature. But if you don't attain that, no wisdom, no loving kindness, no compassion, because it doesn't become conscious, okay? Doesn't become yours. You don't attain that. I'm not being religious. It's simple and clear experience.
Most people don't attain that.
You're right.
That's why I think that's why.
So, okay, you're very persistent. I'm very compassionate, so I tell you why Zen is not more efficient, okay? You got me. I'm telling you. It's my confession, okay? Out of compassion, okay? Zen is not more efficient than the current rate of producing bodhisattvas because it respects freedom. How can you teach freedom? By binding people into ignorant ideas of organized religion. It would be much quicker and much more efficient to produce crowds of totally uniform mind rooted in the same kind of ignorant ideas, but there's millions, so it's very easy to believe that because then we have no problem. Everybody has the same stupidity, so it's great. Zen is asking questions. It respects your free choice. It's not converting people into Buddhism or Zen, whatever that is, so it's not efficient. Because it's a quality-oriented, respectful, and experience attainment-based spiritual path, which can be organized into religion, but look at this. We are the organized religion, great. So we don't really behave like these believers, okay? So that's why we are not so efficient, because we don't tell you who you are. We let you discover it, okay? We don't give you religious ideas. We take away illusions. We don't teach you what to believe, what to say, what to do, but we let you attain it. We respect freedom too much. And that's why I'm here. I cannot be converted into anything but my own experience. That's why I'm here. That's why I'll be a spiritual minority happily. If someone wants to adopt me into some powerful position to be majority, I'll be very, very suspicious. Fortunately, this is not happening. Nobody wants to hire me to influence millions of people. Great. Great, because those who influence millions of people, 99% they become these intolerable narcissistic psychopaths, which I don't want to become. Thank you very much. I'm happy with the 40 of you here. It's enough. It's enough. Yeah, 40, 400, 500. Sometimes I had these big talks. So what? So what? If we can practice alone in the Negev or in the mountains near Rosh Pinna, then you are on the path. If you can practice with your couple relationship, with your family, with your group, small group, big group, you're on the path. If you depend on efficiency, influence, all these kind of meters, how much we accomplished in a decade, a century, it becomes this intolerable religious ego that wants to conquer the world with its truth. It becomes the biggest destructive power. Jerusalem, the Crusades, God wills it, killing in the name of Jesus. Hello. It's all coming from this efficiency. Well, thank you very much. I'm not judging your question. I'm thanking you for your question so that I'll be able to say that because you asked. Last question.
Do you believe that one day, hundreds of years in the future, most humanity will be on that path?
No. No. Earth will look pretty much the same. The proportion of humans on the path or not on the path looks pretty much the same. If we destroy our natural habitat, things get infinitely worse, but we'll still be reborn here to fix it. Our human karma brings us back, whether we have falafel or not. So. Okay? But what I know that I always want to be on the path. And in fact, if you repeat the vows, repeat the sutras, you put that as your software into your navigation, then lifetime after lifetime we follow the same direction. And wherever we manifest, in whatever environment we are born, we strive to attain human body, find the path, find a teacher, find awakening, attaining liberation. Liberation and awakening not the same. Liberation is more work. Awakening is seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Okay? And out of your free will help all beings, because you realize their suffering is your suffering, your happiness is their happiness. We'll always find a way if we try. So I wish we would meet again and again and have this really inefficient minority, stupid practice. Just about don't know. Completely stupid. And that saves all beings from suffering, including ourselves, including our forefathers and all our descendants. So thank you very much for coming here, giving up your comfort zone, practicing together, and attaining a mind which is beyond all these clever, destructive dualities, so that we could become true human beings, lifetime after lifetime. Thank you very much.